Gather round, gather round, gather round. It is Tuesday night in East Lansing. Welcome to Spartan Mag Live. My name is Jim Comparoni, publisher, SpartanMag.com. Gather round. We're going to be talking Michigan State football, maybe some basketball. I don't know. We'll be mixing it up a little bit for the next hour, hour and a half, something like that. Usually we go 2 hours if everybody behaves. Usually everybody behaves pretty well. Depends on how long the camera lasts, if the microphone can stay standing, all that stuff. Hopefully the show will go better than Michigan State's football game did Saturday, losing to Indiana 24-0 in the battle for the old brass platoon. Yeah, I've got that up there. Yeah, Michigan State doesn't own it anymore, but this isn't a Michigan State thing. It's not a Michigan State trophy case, is it? No. It's about college football. And if it pertains to college football, we might have it on display, even if it's the old oaken bucket. I don't know. But anyway, we'll be talking about Michigan State football. What's gone right, what's gone wrong, what needs to be done. We'll be answering your questions, which were posted over at the Underground Bunker message board. We'll be doing that mailbag style. That's the way we do it here with Spartan Mag Live. Also, make sure to tune in a couple hours after the game on Saturdays for the call-in show. Post coming in about Audric Estime. That is news. I saw some other posts about it, that his ranking is supposed to be going up, and that type of thing. Not a huge surprise. I'm not sure, exactly what's going on there. Still listed as committed by Rivals.com. I've not talked to him in a while. We'll have to talk to Corey Robinson. He'll have his ear to the ground on that one. I don't have as we record this on Tuesday night at 8 o'clock, I don't have all of the information as breaking news comes in with recruiting right now. But I saw a question pop up about Audric Estime, Michigan State's 4-star recruit from New Jersey. I did speak with Kevin Wigginton a little bit a couple days ago, and he's from New Jersey, doesn't play on his high school team, but he gave no indication of anything like that going on. But anyway, we've got 9 or 10 questions pertaining to Michigan State football. We will answer those questions. Also, feel free to post some questions in the live area, the chat area. We will field those questions as well. Kind of threw me a curveball there with the Estime thing. I saw that there was some talk about his ranking changing. I'm not sure what's going on there, but he's a big-time running back, and Michigan State got a commitment from him a couple of months ago. If you guys don't already know that, most of you that are on hand watching right now, you're aware of that. Rutgers has been recruiting him hard. They recruited him hard before he committed to Michigan State. And then Rutgers came to East Lansing and defeated Michigan State at Spartan Stadium. And, of course, Greg Schiano and the staff, they're using that against Michigan State, as they should. And Michigan State has some more work to do to continue to hold down that commitment. And they know that's the way recruiting is. And Michigan State is continuing to recruit other players that they've liked in the past that have committed elsewhere. So that's the game. That's the way it's going to be. It's the way it is. Today at the press conference, Mel Tucker talked about the transfer portal and how it relates to what he's doing to build this program, with players going out and coming in. He didn't talk a lot about players coming in, but yesterday, of course, Marcel Lewis, linebacker, entered the transfer portal. Redshirt freshman out of the Detroit area. And, Marcel Lewis had not made the travel team for any of the 4 games. Basically, Michigan State is only dressing travel team members, even for home games. On Saturday against Indiana, Michigan State only dressed 74 players. 74 or 75 is the maximum that's allowed to take on the road in Big Ten games. And for home games, you can dress many more than that. Sometimes you'll see 100 players come out of the huddle. Michigan State's sticking with 74. I'm not 100% sure the reason. I don't know if that's a Big Ten rule or something Michigan State is doing by themselves this year. I'm not sure. Anyway, Marcel Lewis never made the travel team. Played a little bit last year, 3 games, kickoff coverage. Did not crack the 3 deep at the linebacker position. Entered the transfer portal. A lot of indications that Mel Tucker encouraged him to do so. Have that from good sources. And Tucker today indicated that won't be the last one. And, Tucker made an interesting point, and I wrote about this a little bit in the .comp article that we posted tonight over at SpartanMag.com, that it's been 4 games now, and Tucker says now we're getting an idea of who can do what. which is an interesting way of saying it's taken him this long to learn about his players. Hey, we got the bell. I don't have a bell. I don't know if I can hit this up North Cup. It's kind of dull. Sorry about that. We got a personal sponsorship. Certainly appreciate that. I'll have to check out exactly what's going on here. Let me go to the YouTube channel and our YouTube channel and see exactly who it is, because as I look on the screen, I cannot see who did that. And I want to get right to your question, if you did post a question, to go along with that sponsorship. It's Kenneth Roberts. All right. Thanks a lot, Kenneth Roberts. Thank you very much for that personal sponsorship in the tip jar tonight. Don't have a bell here. I used to ring the lamp, but the lamp is over across the room now. Anyway, his question: do you expect MSU to pursue transfer athletes going forward, given what Mel Tucker said today in his press conference? Coach Mel Tucker still actively recruiting. I have trouble pronouncing his name. Let me see. It's the linebacker from USC. You know, they're trying to recruit him, but if they can't get visits, they're not going to get him, because, you know, he's out in California. Talking about Nateote. I've got a phonetic pronunciation for his little cheat sheet. Nateote, 4-star linebacker from California, committed to USC, has shown a lot of interest in Michigan State, but he's told Corey Robinson that if he can't visit, he's likely not going to Michigan State. And the NCAA recently extended the calendar of the dead period. I think it's going to go all the way through this recruiting cycle. So everybody that signs anywhere this year will not have taken official visits. And really no, you know, in the unofficial visits these days, there's no face-to-face contact with coaches. So do I expect Michigan State to pursue transfer athletes? Yeah, and I kind of expected Michigan State to do that last spring. And that's one of the questions on the mailbag we will get to in a moment. I expected Michigan State to do that last spring, possibly for a tight end. You can see Michigan State's low on tight ends right now. They recently moved true freshman Ian Stewart to tight end. I think he's got a chance to do pretty well there, but he's a young guy that's not been lifting weights to block like a tight end. So although he's moved there for practice and he dressed for the game on Saturday, whether or not he can block at a tight end level, at a Big Ten tight end level, it's a lot to ask right now. So I kind of expected Michigan State to do that at tight end. They've gone out and got a junior college commitment at offensive tackle. Linebacker, is that something that could happen? If you figure Antoine Simmons likely to go pro after this season, he is a senior. I mean, everybody gets another year of eligibility after this season, but he's ready to go. He will go. But anyway, hey, give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel here. If you're new to SpartanMag.com, if you're not familiar with SpartanMag.com, head on over to SpartanMag.com. You can get a free trial, 30 days. Try us out. See what you think. I think if you're here watching this and you're still watching, chances are you're a Michigan State fan and you would appreciate SpartanMag.com. You'd get addicted to it and it would make your life better. So check it out. All right, let's go to the mailbag. Question number 1. Let me see if I can find it. Here we go. Oh, it's from Michigan State MSU Pat in Atlanta, Georgia, via St. Clair Shores, Michigan. Good to have you, Pat. He says, probably the most obvious one. How do you think Michigan State should finish the season at quarterback? It's becoming more apparent by Tucker's comments. He sees this as more of an evaluation season and chance to have the guys staying to grow into the system. My thoughts on which quarterback? You know, based on Saturday, I want to see more from Peyton Thorne. I want to see him start. I'd like to see Peyton Thorne get as many opportunities right now as Lombardi has gotten. We know what Lombardi can do. I mean, there's a chance Lombardi can improve, but he's kind of hit a ceiling here in games 3 and 4. And we never know when the last game is going to be played this season. I mean, the Maryland game is still, they're expecting to play. Mel Tucker said today that he had a phone conversation with Mike Loxley, the head coach at Maryland. Just checking to make sure if the mic was working. And they spoke for a long time, and Tucker got every indication that Maryland wants to play. They're preparing to play, but Maryland underwent some more antigen tests either yesterday or today. They did not practice on Monday. So as near as Mel Tucker can see, there's supposed to be a game on Saturday, Michigan State preparing as such. By the time you watch this Spartan Mag Live, if you're not here with us live right now, who knows, you might be watching this on Thursday. Who knows, the game might be canceled by then. I don't know. All the more reason to get Peyton Thorne a couple of starts, see what he can do, so you can have a chance to further evaluate that situation going forward. And so, Thorne, I liked what Lombardi did in the first 2 games. I was kind of surprised. I think a lot of Michigan State fans looked at Rocky Lombardi coming into the season and were like, we've seen what he can do. There wasn't a lot of, I didn't detect a lot of optimism from Michigan State fans about Lombardi. I was in a need to see it to believe it. Great kid, works hard, credit to the program, all those good things. He came out against Rutgers, played pretty well, despite the turnovers, many of which were not his fault. Threw the ball more accurately than he did in years past. Then against Michigan, played really well, especially with the deep ball. 300 yards both games. And if you watch this program a lot, or our other podcasts, or if you frequent the Underground Bunker message board at SpartanMag.com, you know that I said, hey, Lombardi's better than I expected. You can win with that guy. You can win Big Ten football games with him. You can be a bowl-eligible plus team with a quarterback playing the way he did against Rutgers and Michigan. Then against Iowa, ran into some problems, turnovers, big deficit, and then he made a mistake of forcing a couple of passes. There was the one where he slipped, where it was really not a good decision, not a good throw. Was that the pick six? I can't remember. That was the pick six. But anyway, you saw it. Lombardi struggled in that game. And I said it on Saturday night in the call-in show. Hey, it was in Iowa, back in his home state. Different type of pressures. Trying to overdo it maybe. All right. Give him a mulligan, bring him back. And then against Indiana, the first interception, not necessarily a bad read, but the throw was not good, obviously. Left it too far into the field. Left it short. Didn't throw it far enough to the sideline, too much air under it, and enabled a corner to come off of man-to-man and back to intercept that thing like a punt. Not a good throw. Not a good throw. He knew it. He didn't do it on purpose, but now you're starting to get some of the inconsistencies we saw from him earlier in his career. And then, of course, the last interception, forcing that one on 1st and 10, the first play of a drive, into cover 2. I mean, he had number 7, Ricky White, on a dig, crossing route, open right in front of him, and made a throw. It's cover 2. It wasn't easy for me to say, but it shouldn't be a difficult read for a quarterback. That one in cover 2, the receiver passes the corner lets him go. And there's probably pre-snap reads that they have that tell them that earlier anyway. But anyway, cover 2, you can't, that you see cover 2, you go over here to this side to your dig. Didn't do that. That was his last pass, came out of the game. You guys saw what happened. Inaccurate, okay. A little bit banged up, okay. But that read in year number 4, that read cannot happen. On 1st and 10, if you're down by 14 and there's 3 minutes to go in the game and you got to take a risk and it's a heavy rush and you don't have time and you're just throwing a prayer, okay. But not in that situation. You can't have a 4th-year quarterback doing that. So he's regressed from the first 2 weeks. Do I think he's still capable of giving you winning football? Yes, but there's a lot of questions there. Peyton Thorne did some good things. I like the way he can escape the pocket. Everybody can see that. He can elongate a play. And with that athleticism, the chemistry he has with his former high school teammate, Jaden Reed, is really intriguing. His ability to get out of trouble, it's kind of, it's better than Lombardi's, and these days that makes it harder for a defensive coordinator to prepare. So he's got a nice ceiling of potential. A couple of nice passes, that slant to Jaden Reed, that bender to Tyler Hunt. Some nice passes there. Interception. Looked to me like he just tried to put too much heat on it. Missed high. Gillison was open. Had 2 dropped passes. Let's see. Adam Burghorst had one. And I think Ricky White had one. So not perfect. On some 3rd downs, there were some people that might have been open that he could have gone to. But they blitzed him. And they kept they rotate a lot of second stringers, Indiana does. And he wasn't going against mop-up defense. He was going against Indiana's playing group, and they were blitzing him a lot. So Peyton Thorne Although he was in a blowout situation, it was not mop-up time. He was seeing real bullets, real game day speed and anxiety. And he did some good things. So I want to see Thorne. I want to see what he can do. Mel Tucker's not going to say he was going to start. He won't say it all week. He says they'll take this week into account. They're putting pads on Tuesday and Wednesday. I'm expecting Thorne, unless Thorne just has a bad week of practice. That's my guess. Question number 2, Solo Beer Guy from Parts Unknown says, can you speak on the offensive line issues? Is it a lack of technique, lack of talent, new system, all of the above? The line seems to have regressed this year under, by all accounts, superior offensive line coaching, given Kapilovic's track record. So why the decline in play? Well, pass protection was good against Michigan, not good against Iowa. Pass protection was good against Rutgers. Run blocking was terrible against Rutgers, a little better against Michigan. I did a post on this over at the Underground Bunker message board earlier today. And the offensive line, and the reason I looked it up is because in going back to the game yesterday, I wasn't seeing offensive linemen just like missing blocks. Now, I'd have to go back and look at the sacks. Some of those were pressures, meaning, well, the sack in the first half was a stunt. It was a zone blitz stunt. And Samac at center and Duplain at left guard didn't pass it off correctly. There was a linebacker crashing in here, and Samac passed him off, and Samac did not get back to the stunting defensive tackle that went in for a sack. I don't know if Samac didn't think Duplain was in a position to take that guy, so he stayed with it, or if he didn't identify. But, all right, that was picking up a stunt. That's a communication thing. That's not a physical error. That one was just sharpness and communication. And I noticed that happened in the first half. After halftime, when they came out for the 5 or 10 minute warm-up period prior to the start of the second half, I saw Kapilovic working with Samac, Carrick, and Duplain with some linemen in front of them running stunts just to work on passing that off. Now, of course, they work on that all week. Maybe they saw something different with the way that linebacker crashed in. It was an effective pass rush. For a 4-man rush, it was an effective pressure scheme. So that one, not a physical situation, but you can't keep having communication errors. Samac, a second-year player, true sophomore. You'd anticipate him becoming better at that as it goes. The other sacks, I'd have to go back and chart them again and look to see how many were blitzes and unblocked players that weren't accounted for and nobody getting beat per se. I'd have to go back and look at it. And there was a heavy rush. But the run blocking, Michigan State didn't really get the run game going. But, the post I did on the message board, Michigan State only had 4 tailback runs before the game was 17-0. Might have been 3 tailback runs, and then it's 17-0, and then a 4th tailback run, and then it was 24-0. So when it's 24-0, you have to go to the air more often. They know it. They'll be bringing pressures, changing the way they do things, and Michigan State couldn't really continue to try to establish the run the way they would want to with a game plan going into a game. Here it is, 3 or 4. Yeah, they had 3. They only had 3 tailback runs, and it's 17-0. Only 4 tailback runs, and it's 24-0. The interesting thing is that Michigan State their tailbacks averaged 3.3 yards per carry. That's not great, but it's not bad. 3.3, not great, but it's not terrible. Certainly not as terrible as the Rutgers game. And if you look at Michigan State's 2 best tailbacks on that day, Hayward and Simmons, they only had 10 carries between them for 42 yards. So those 2 guys combined for 4.2 yards per carry. Not terrible. So you're asking about regressing offensive line play. The run blocking to me on Saturday, and to an extent in the Iowa game, was kind of a spoiled specimen. It's kind of an incomplete almost, because they didn't get a chance to stay with the run game the way they did in the Michigan game. Michigan game, they stayed with the run game. What did Michigan State run for? 125 yards, 150, something like that. And just had enough balance to keep it going, deliver some body blows, and manage to win the game. You get these interceptions, you get these turnovers, you turn it over 3 times, your first 5 possessions against Indiana. And of the 3 possessions, it was the first play on 2 of those drives. Very first play of the drive, interception. Very first play of the drive, Anthony Williams fumble. Second play of the drive, interception. That's your first 5 drives. You're down 17-0. Kind of takes away the running game a little bit. Then 24-0, you've had 4 tailback carries. That's why you finish a game with only 16 tailback carries in a game. 16 tailback carries. One of them was Anthony Williams, and he fumbled. And if he hadn't fumbled, he was gaining 3 yards. That's a terrible if, but the offensive line, that wasn't their fault that he fumbled. Elijah Collins, 3 carries, 1.7 yards. Still not sure what's going on with him. But offensive line, I'm seeing some run blocking progress. All right. And also the current center, Nick Samak, he didn't play much center against Rutgers, had like 1 series. So since he's been the center, offensive line against Michigan, very good in pass protection, good enough in run blocking. Iowa, pass protection not good enough. Run blocking, spoiled specimen against Indiana. I've got to go back and look at those sacks specifically. Something I didn't do when I went back and looked at the game. My bad. Give me an incomplete on that, or an F if you want. But offensive line, very disappointed with them in the Rutgers game. A little better, a little later on, but against Iowa, Michigan State had 26 tailback runs, closer to a full day. Against Iowa, Michigan State averaged 3.0 yards per carry. Again, doesn't sound great, but that's better than what Iowa is normally giving up. Iowa is only allowing 2.8 yards per carry this year, which is the number 1 run defense in the Big Ten. So Michigan State averaged 3 yards per carry against the number 1 run defense in the Big Ten. That's not bad. And Tucker said after the game that there were 15 run plays that Michigan State played against Iowa, 15 run plays that they charted as being efficient run plays, gaining, I think, 3 yards or more, and no one on the offensive line missed a block. That might be setting the bar low. That might sound low to you, but it's an efficient run play. 3.0 per carry against Iowa. So don't bury the offensive line just yet. Do they have a chance to get better in the second half of the season? I think so. Now, they've got Maryland this week. Maryland has been terrible with they've been a little bit of a mixed bag, but they gave up a ton of yards on the ground against Minnesota and Northwestern. Let me see if I can find those numbers. So, here it is. Maryland, Michigan State's scheduled opponent for this weekend, allowed 262 yards rushing to Minnesota. Maryland allowed 325 yards rushing to Northwestern. Now, that's way back on October 24th. Against Penn State, their most recent game, Penn State only rushed for 94 yards, and 18 of those were tailback runs. They ran the quarterback a lot, and ran Clifford a lot, which has been strange for Penn State this year. But Penn State got behind, 35-7 or something like that, so their run game was out the window. So Michigan State, if they can get into a game and not turn it over 3 times in the first quarter, and just ease into a game and get into the game plan and try to establish some balance, I'd like to see that, to see if the offensive line can make some progress. And the games coming up after they play Maryland, of course, they've got Northwestern, Penn State, Ohio State. Penn State is winless, having a bad year, but it's still, I got to believe, not going to be really easy to run the ball against them. Northwestern is playing really good run defense this year. So if Michigan State wants to have a good game running the ball, this weekend's got to be the best shot to do it. So if you're a Michigan State football fan, for a lot of reasons, you're hoping they play that game for a lot of reasons. Even if they lose, you want to see them go out there. You want to see Peyton Thorne get the start. You want to see the offensive line can make some progress. That's where they are right now. Let me get over here to the chat area to see what's going on. James Bannon said, waiting patiently. Yeah, it was about 4 minutes late. Sorry about that. Old Tuck says the bell cow is here. It's great to have Old Tuck batting leadoff in the call-in show, the first caller on Saturday. James Bannon says, like everyone, the potential for transfer portal and present players. Also, the possibility of transfers in and what positions. I'll get to that question later because that one came up in the mailbag. Also, it's a hot button topic. A lot of people want to know what's going on with the transfer portal. Mr. Hockey Wings 40 GGG says, do you see Audric Estime decommitting now that he's getting more national attention? Okay, I misread that earlier. I'll probably have to go back and edit that out so no one gets jumpy. I thought he was asking, did you see that Audric Estime decommitted? You're actually asking, do you see him decommitting now that he's getting more national attention? Well, I think, Rutgers going after him hard. He's listening to them. That's always a concerning sign. Hey, Michigan State needs to win a couple games here in the last 4. That would ease his mind a little bit, I'm sure. And then you have to hope that maybe Rutgers goes back to being Rutgers a little bit. But there's a lot of forces trying to keep him at home. His former high school coach is running backs coach at Rutgers. He's an assistant coach. I think he's running backs coach. Augie Hoffman, I think is his name. So Michigan State's got more work to do. They knew that when they got a commitment from him. And Michigan State made it more difficult on themselves by losing to Rutgers. So do I see him decommitting? I see Michigan State having to continue to hustle to bring that one home. So Old Tuck says, Mel talked today about the nickel and said he wanted to play more dime. Isn't dime for passing downs and not used as a base defense? Yes, you're right. Dime is 6 defensive backs. It is more of a pass game situation type of defense. And Michigan State, in passing situations on Saturday, checked out a defensive lineman and put an extra linebacker in. So instead of a 4-2-5, they became a 3-3-5. And, with Antoine Simmons out there in his background, it's almost like a dime. But, yeah, they've done, the Tressel Narduzzi defense, they occasionally played some dime against Northwestern and some other teams. So, yeah, dime's not really a pass defense. It's not really a base defense. Smitty Rock says, you compete to play, you compete to stay. That's something that Mel Tucker said today. An interesting quote. He said that before, but really rang home emphatically today. Because I don't know if I said it already today, but I mentioned it in an article I wrote earlier today that, Mel Tucker did not have spring practice, like all coaches did not have it. But a first-year coach, no spring practice, did not have him in the summer, obviously. No August camp. Practice started for 4 days in August, then it shut down, then began again in September. They had 5 or 6 weeks to get ready, which is longer than usual, but they were in class too, so it wasn't the usual condensed version of preseason camp. So then you had that, then you had 4 games. So they've played 4 games. And part of that is you play a game, you watch film, you get corrected, you go to the practice field, you work on those things. And you see, and like he said, we're halfway through the season now. We know what we've got. And I said, stop and think about that right now. It's November 17th, halfway through the season. Not the usual November. But he's just now seeing what he's got. Where he is right now in terms of evaluating his own roster is where a first-year coach normally would be if they had spring practice the entire summer and then preseason camp and then non-conference games against, Akron, Western Michigan, Youngstown State, and Arizona State or something. Like 4 non-conference games. That's where he is right now. And that's where you usually are before your first Big Ten game. And that's where Mel Tucker is in terms of evaluating his talent. So he's trying to figure out who his quarterback is still. Remember in the Rose Bowl year in 2013, Mark D'Antonio didn't know who his quarterback was until about the 4th game. Went to the Rose Bowl. I'm not saying this is a Rose Bowl team, but you need that time to evaluate what you have. And now you're seeing some players. You see Marcel Lewis going to the transfer portal. Mel Tucker suggesting that he do that. And he won't be the last one. I've not done the math to find out how much space Michigan State needs in order to sign a 25-man class. I don't know if they need all 25 slots open before the early signing period in December, or if they just want to get up to like 20 and then do the last 5 in February. I'm not sure, but there's going to be more players leaving. Brad Fashenko checking in. So anyway, back to that thought. If you haven't seen the press conference or you've not been over the Underground Bunker message board watching us talk about what happened at the press conference today, one of Mel Tucker's quotes. He said, obviously, you can anticipate seeing some more movement on our roster, whether it's portal related or otherwise, unquote. And he said, quote, everything is in evaluation. Halfway through the season at this point, we have a pretty good idea of who can do what. It's compete and show us what you can do and earn your spot, earn your playing time, earn your right to even stay on the team, because this is not like a recreational type of situation. This is compete to play, compete to stay, unquote. So he's made it clear to the players that's the way it is. And then he echoed it in the press conference today. I heard that, in recent days, it's become real clear to the players that he'll have no trouble telling guys, okay, you need to go somewhere else. The portal's right there. It's time to move on. Better for you. You're not going to play here or whatever. That's a cold way to do it. Not the way Mark D'Antonio did it. A lot of fans felt D'Antonio should have done it and maybe handicapped himself a little bit in that regard. It's a tough call. Tough call on that. I've seen it work both ways. But in this day and age, when you're competing against teams that are doing it, it's a tough. It's understandable, and he's seen it done. It was done that way at Alabama. So that's that. All right, continue to go ahead and post some more questions. Thanks again to Kenneth Roberts for the personal sponsorship and the question that goes with it. With personal sponsorship, your question will go straight to the top, and we'll get right to it. A lot of fun. All right. I got a few more questions here. We're going to try not to go 2 hours tonight. Mall 286 from South Philadelphia says, we have and we will continue to see an influx of young players getting playing time. Who have you been most impressed with? He says, my group is Angelo Gross, Christian Jackson, Jordan Simmons, Chase Klein. Young guys, I like a young guy too. You've got Christian Jackson in that group. Now, that's a third-year guy, but I'll go with a third-year guy also. Deshaun Mallory, I think he continues to do well, doing some good things, physical, the point of attack, moving his feet a little bit, disengaging with his hands, making plays. He was, Indiana had trouble running inside all day, and they kept trying to run at the end of the game, and Michigan State didn't allow it. And that's what I really liked about that game. Indiana didn't waste time trying to run up the score and posture and all that stuff. They had the lead 24-0, and they continued to try to run the inside run because they were unable to do it all day. So they wanted to keep working on it, get it on film, get some corrections. Very Tom Izzo-esque, the way Tom Allen, the head coach of Indiana, approached that. With a lead, comfortable game, left everybody in, and kept working on something that had been a weakness for Indiana that day. Their one weakness that day, they could not run inside against Michigan State. So they kept trying it, and it served a purpose also. They ran out the last 7 minutes of the game. But they weren't running like a fourth-string, fullback just to run out clock. They were trying to execute plays because he was upset that they couldn't get it done. And Michigan State continued to play hard and stopped it. But I liked it because it was like practice. It was like inside drill. And I know a lot of Michigan State fans were just in misery because Michigan State was losing 24-0. But when Michigan State got that stop inside the 1 yard line with 9 minutes to go, they celebrated. The coaches let the players know that's great. They were like euphoric about it, just because there were some guys in there, still working hard, showing some heart, showing some the opposite of what Michigan was doing. I mean, Michigan when they were losing to Wisconsin, they had guys quitting out there. So regardless of the score, keep working, and it builds toward the future. I don't know. You might, coaches see it that way. Other people may not, but I kind of enjoyed watching it because we don't get to watch practice, right? Chris Trynum coming big, coming strong. Chris Trynum, appreciate it, man. Big chunk, $25. Really appreciate that. Appreciate the big chunks like that. Want to tell people, hey, $2 is good too. We get the $2 tip jar is awesome at Chris Trynum. That's really much appreciated. Let me see if that came with a question. I don't see a question with it. It's good to see Paul Simmons here, making his first live appearance. Oh, here it is. Chris Trynum says, thanks for the response, Comp. Good shout out to a fellow Bolingbrook High School alum, Deshaun Mallory. Wow, that's all it takes? Just mention the Bolingbrook guys and the Bolingbrook Army starts hitting the tip jar. Appreciate that. No, Mallory And I wasn't sure, and I've said this before. First time I saw him at practice when he was a true freshman, I mentioned this at one of the call-in shows or something. I remember telling Conendike, because, we usually split the field. He goes and watches half the guys, and I might go watch half the guys. I'm like, Deshaun Mallory looks he had 100 guys on the practice field, and only one dude looked like Deshaun Mallory. Just a big human being. Just a big, big refrigerator of a man. And I didn't know what he was going to become. I just knew he was different. And, didn't play he redshirted and didn't play much last year. I can't even remember his high school film. I don't remember what I thought about that. But okay, he was kind of not in the playing group, and when that happens after a couple of years, you start to think, well, the chances that someone pans out start to decrease. Then you get a new coaching staff. Mallory's in there, Christian Jackson's in there, Emmanuel Flowers in the playing group. A lot of guys that look like they were going to be left as roadkill on the side are in the playing group. And Mallory, this season, making a progression. Against Rutgers, he was just kind of a guy. They couldn't really move him, but he wasn't really making plays. Against Michigan, he started getting off blocks and making plays. Iowa game, started to see some lateral movement from him. I talked about that on the podcasts last week. His ability to stay in his gap and run laterally when Iowa ran an outside zone one time when he was on the field. I was like, oh, he can move his feet. I didn't know that. And short yardage, against Indiana a couple times, getting into people, heavy to this side, cross-face, disengage, making tackles. Mallory's a useful player for sure. So he's one of my young guys. Jalen Hunt, of course, redshirt freshman, started this past weekend. Quick, physical. Got knocked out of that game in the Indiana game, but today Tucker said that he practiced on Monday, which indicates he's fine to play this week, which I'm very happy to hear. It looked to me like, he was running full speed and kind of got undercut and face planted hard into the ground. And sometimes guys get shaken up by the ground. They helped him off the field. Didn't look like there was a shoulder or arm. Definitely not a lower body situation. I think he people in the media are not supposed to speculate, but I'm going to go ahead and speculate. Looked like he got knocked out. And I was like, man, these days that's a tough deal. But it's possible to be knocked out and not get a concussion. So he's back practicing Monday. That's great news. Great news. Plays hard, physical. He can two-gap, physical at the point, but also quick enough to one-gap and do some things. Jalen Hunt's got a nice future between he and Mallory. 3 more years of those guys. That's what I'm talking about. It's good to build from inside out with that. Michael Bennett. I was talking about that on the Underground Bunker message board earlier today. I'm going to throw that film out there. There's a play he made in the red zone defensively against Indiana where they're running at him, point of attack, he was strong, posted, was strong, and then disengaged. I think it might have been a pop sweep, pop pass sweep, pop jet sweep, got off, chased down, laid out, and made the tackle. It was like a 3-yard gain. But the combination of strength, post, read, disengage, and then like 2-step speed laying out, I was like, who let George Webster on the field? I'm not saying he's that good, but now he showed some strength against Michigan and one other time. He's not playing a lot of snaps, but when he got in there, the point of attack, which I wasn't really sure he had that in him. He's a lean guy and he's a young guy, type of guy that has the propensity to get steamrolled at the point of attack. He's been sturdy at the point of attack, and he's going to build from there because he's still kind of lean, but he's got some wiry strength. Detroit Spartan says, nice spittoon. You know where I got it from, Detroit Spartan. Thank you. And we've got some college football knickknacks. Like I said, Michigan State if you're just joining us, Michigan State no longer has the spittoon, but that doesn't mean that I can't display it. Just like it doesn't mean I can't display Floyd of Rosedale. You know what I'm talking about? So I'm going to do what I want, and looking forward to some other things. I can wear a hockey t-shirt, and I'm wearing a hockey t-shirt with Ted Lindsay, because you got to love Ted Lindsay, right? But it's hockey week in East Lansing this week. Thursday night, 6 o'clock, Munn Ice Arena. College hockey season starts. I'm not wearing a college hockey shirt, but I had to wear a hockey shirt of some point, some part, some capacity. Michigan State, Arizona State on Thursday. Big Ten Network. No fans. Then they play Friday night also. I don't know if the Friday night game is going to be on Big Ten Plus or not. It's not on the Big Ten Network. Arizona State's already played 2 games. They played Michigan last weekend. They got destroyed. Michigan looks pretty good. But Michigan State back on the ice. Reduced Big Ten schedule. I think they've got 5 home and homes between now and January 1st. And then at that point, they're going to re-up and schedule the second half of the season later. But it's great for college hockey, and I talked to Danton Cole about this 2 days ago during a Zoom press conference, actually yesterday. It's an opportunity for college hockey because right now there is no hockey. There's no NHL. Of course, they ended their season late. Right now they're on hiatus. They might come back, January, late January, I'm not sure. But right now, it's not only the only hockey game in town, the only hockey game in the state. In some regards, college hockey is the only hockey on the continent. So some of the games are getting picked up by NHL Network, I think TSN. So you're going to see it, and it's a good product. They got a chance to catch some eyeballs, and it's a good thing. So that's that. But like your average Red Wings fans that are jonesing for hockey now that it's getting cold and everything, can't watch any hockey. But Michigan State versus Arizona State Thursday night, Big Ten Network. Check it out. Getting back to the younger players. Michael Bennett. Jeff Pietrowski, another young defensive lineman. 6'1", 245 from Lakewood St. Ed's. He got in for, I think, 2 plays against Indiana. And he was strong at the point of attack. Then the next one, strong again, disengaged, got in on an assist, I think it was. Mel Tucker mentioned him in the press conference today that he's a guy that's earned more playing time. At 245, 6'1", a teenager, I wouldn't have thought that he would have that kind of strength. I was like, man, he showed me something there. And Pietrowski, an Ohio guy, and that happens. Did I say Michael? I say Michael Bennett? I always do that. Michael Fletcher. I've done that before, and it's stuck in my head that way. Just like I used to call Benny Fowler Benny Cunningham all the time. I used to mesh B.J. Cunningham and Benny Fowler. Michael Fletcher. Bennett. There must be a defensive end Bennett that's stuck in my head. It won't be the last time that happens, because when my brain gets set on something, like Detroit Spartan says, I'm old, and it kind of just... Yeah, Michael Bennett was the tailback from Wisconsin. But I'm trying to think who was the Bennett that was a defensive end at Alabama. Did they have one? Around that era, back in the 80s. Anyway, you caught me. I feel bad. It won't be the last time. Wide receivers, Ricky White. Maybe that is. There's an NFL defensive end named Michael Bennett. Anyway, Ricky White, of course. Cornelius Bennett. That's it. Very recent Michael Bennett. Cornelius Bennett. That was Alabama. I'm ashamed. I feel shame. 2 minutes, penalty box. Ricky White, Terry Lockett, Montorie Foster. Other young guys that have caught my eye. Lockett and Foster haven't caught a pass yet. Foster was targeted once by Thorne. But Ricky White, of course, outstanding. But those are some young guys that have caught my eye. Another question here from Maul out of South Philadelphia says, do you think Dotson and Gillison will ever improve as blockers? Why has their development been so stunted? Now, Gillison is improving in his blocking. It's not as shaky as it used to be, and it used to be really bad. Better this year. Dotson, of course, has been injured. Was injured in the Michigan game. Looked like a semi-serious lower body situation. Not sure when he's coming back. The fact that Ian Stewart has moved to tight end makes me believe Dotson might be a while. So Dotson, those guys, we talked about, was it the Rutgers game where Dotson actually blocked pretty well that day, but had consecutive mishaps in turning a 3rd and 1 into a 4th and 3, and then on the 4th and 3, messed that one up also, just assignment-wise. So Dotson was making progress physically. Now he's on the shelf. Gillison is making progress, but not where they need to be, not where they need their tight ends to be. Why is it taking so long? Not sure. This is a new tight end coach that they have this year. Not sure. I don't have a good answer for that, other than if you want to look at recruiting, evaluation, player development, all those things. Noah Davis was a tight end that was supposed to be a really good blocker coming in, that they would try to morph into becoming a better receiver. He played early as a true freshman, entered the portal last year around this time. I think he went to a MAC school, Akron or something like that. But that's a guy, Noah Davis, and what he was supposed to be is something they're lacking right now at the tight end position in terms of blocking ability. Question number 4. We've got a question coming up about Adam Burgors coming up a little bit later. Noah Davis went to Cincinnati? Okay. Birdman Rob South says, Rob South, good to have you here, says, I love how Mel Tucker talked at his presser today. The way Mel Tucker is recruiting is way different than Mark D'Antonio. Obviously, he's going for size. How long do you think until we start turning the corner with Mel Tucker's recruits? 2 to 3 years minimum, he says, question mark. Well, I'm not sure it's completely different. I mean, Tucker's really emphasizing size, just like Saban did, and Saban operating from the Gil Brandt book. D'Antonio wanted frames also. He rarely signed anyone that was shorter than 5'11". They signed Kalen Gervin. Larice Nelson was an exception at the 11th hour on signing day that year. But D'Antonio didn't go around signing a bunch of short guys. As far as big defensive linemen, I mean, D'Antonio signed Deshaun Mallory. So I don't think, he signed some big wide receivers. So I don't agree that it's different, that Tucker's going for size more so than D'Antonio did. Now, can he recruit better, more highly ranked guys outside of the 5-hour radius? I think that's what he's planning to do. We'll have to wait and see whether that happens. In the meantime, all right, we've been going for about 45 minutes so far. Give us a thumbs up if you're new. I've got to send a little tweet out here to let people know that this nonsense is going on. I hope everybody had a great Halloween 3 weeks ago. And as we count down toward Thanksgiving, I hope everybody is safe and happy and healthy and warm. And I want to shout out to Ohio Spartan. I meant to do that earlier. Hope you're doing well. And we'll hear from you soon. We're thinking about you. Good man. All right. WX Spartan from the banks of the Saginaw River says, Jim, is there a reason in your mind that Dwayne Stevens, going to basketball now, is there a reason Dwayne Stevens has not had a head coaching opportunity elsewhere? Is it a personal choice to stay with Izzo? I think he loves being a first assistant with Izzo. He's looked at some jobs, but it's not like he's gone out every single year dying to become a head coach. And right now, I mean, you can make good money as a lead assistant. And some of those mid-major programs strapped for cash, you can go there and be the man, but make less money. He's got a pretty good gig right now. And, yeah, he was interested in the U of D job, and I thought U of D was ignorant to hire. Who was the dude they hired? The carnival barker that used to coach for Beeline? What was his name? Hired that guy. So, Stevens, since then, I'm not sure if Stevens interviewed for the Central job the last time it came open. But, again, I mean, you go to those MAC schools. I mean, look at Mark Montgomery. He's been hanging around in Northern Illinois. He's been almost in the tournament a couple times. I think last year was going to be the best chance to get in. It has not happened. But in terms of your impact, your Q rating, how much you're seen a lot more as a lead assistant at a place like Michigan State than if you're head coach at Northern Illinois. I mean, how much have you seen Mark Montgomery on TV in the last 5 years? Like 0, right? And he's not doing a bad job there. Maybe he'll get over the top. Sadie Washington turned down Western Michigan, where he was a star player, to stay at Michigan. That's a great point. With these athletic departments have decent amounts of money coming in from the Big Ten Network and from television. So assistant coaches at the major programs are better compensated than in relation to mid-major head coaches. They're better compensated than they used to be. They make more money than mid-major coaches in a lot of instances. So I think he's happy to stay there. I mean, I'm not going to say it's a no-stress job at all. I mean, Izzo makes those guys work, but there's a different level of stress when it's your rig. So he's been interested in being a head coach, but only at the right type of program. He's not out there putting his resume out every single year. Same with Dane Fife to an extent. Question number 6. This is Terrence from Oklahoma City. He says, the more fans watch this team, I think more and more of them come to realize this may be a longer rebuilding project for Mel Tucker than previously thought. Since Michigan State has not yet achieved the consistent recruiting success of programs like Notre Dame, Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan, it seems Mel Tucker will still have to develop his talent over several years at Michigan State. Do you think there's enough patience in East Lansing to grant him the time he needs? Well, that's up to you. That's up to the fans. Because I think one of the reasons D'Antonio left is because he felt, some simmering heat building. And coming into this year, it was going to be a difficult schedule if they would have had the game at BYU plus the Miami game, playing two challenging games when no one else is playing, two non-conference challenging games like that. So D'Antonio, he tired out. He wasn't sure. He could tell recruits he was going to be around for 5 years. All of that stuff's true and all that. But if that heat hadn't been there, I think he comes back and he's still coaching. So it's fans have a lot to do with adjusting that climate control. You're asking, do I think there's enough patience in East Lansing to grant him the time he needs? Well, I would hope there's going to be more patience than there was like Florida State had or Arkansas. Now, Arkansas's been halfway decent this year, but they fired my man after, a year and a quarter? That's ridiculous. So I don't think you can judge a coach until he gets his own players. Now, if a coach is going 0-12, that's a problem, obviously. I don't think that's going to happen. But I think there's some patience. I think there's a level of sanity with Michigan State fans that's healthier than Arkansas. I don't want to compare it to Florida State because Florida State's had some tremendous heights in recent decades. So they've got a different appetite. Now, Michigan State's appetite and expectations have changed also. Mark D'Antonio made it that way. So that's part of the job. But do I think there's going to be patience? I'm not really good at anticipating that or handicapping that. But I think there's patience this year. I think there's understanding this year. Spefton from East Lansing says, which positions do you think Tucker needs to look to for the junior college ranks or the transfer portal to get immediate help for next season? He says the obvious positions are quarterback, linebacker, and tight end, as well as offensive tackle and defensive end. Quarterback, linebacker, tight end, offensive tackle, defensive. You want to fill 5 positions with transfer portal guys? What do you think this is? Kansas State? He says, am I missing any? Also, are there any young players who might step up in those positions? Well, offensive tackle, they've got a commitment from Baldwin, the kid originally from the Detroit area, who went to community college in Independence, community college in Kansas. Kind of a big athlete, 6'7", a little bit of a project. All offensive linemen are projects to some extent, especially junior college offensive linemen, but they feel they need some help there at offensive tackle. So he's going to be coming in. I think he's going to have 4 years to play. So that one, he might not be an immediate starter type of guy, but he's there. I was surprised, Michigan State, like I said earlier, that they didn't go after a transfer portal tight end last spring. Linebacker, if Simmons moves on, what do you have coming back? You've got Noah Harvey, who's had some issues of his own with gap reads. He had some plays this weekend where he was one-gapping, and when it's one-gapping, he can pull the pin, turn it loose, penetrate the gap, make a tackle, make a play, and look like a linebacker in the old Tressel-Narduzzi system. When he has to two-gap and make a read and reactions, he has some problems there. And there was a problem. There was one play in which Indiana had a little 9 or 10-yard run. And sure enough, I don't know if he was wrong, but he ended up in the same gap as the defensive end, which is might as well have 10 people on the field. So I think I only saw one gap error from him in that game, but Indiana I think their weakness is they're not varied in the run game. All that they do is like inside zone, occasional outside zone. They don't do any gap plays. They don't do something. They make it easier for you to stay in your gaps. Iowa makes it harder to read what's going on because they'll change it up with some gap plays and more of the wham blocks, the split zone. Indiana does some of that also. But anyway, linebacker, you got Chase Klein, Harvey, Jess Lord Boateng. We've not seen Jess Lord Boateng on the field all year in a quality rep, so I'm not sure what he has. Simmons will probably be gone. The third string linebackers, as they warmed up on Saturday in pregame, the only other two linebackers that dressed were Cal Halliday, the true freshman from Pennsylvania, and he was ejected for the targeting foul on special teams. And Terry O'Connor, a walk-on from Traverse City. I've never seen him play. And those are your linebackers. So, yeah, I would think linebacker, transfer portal. And Michigan State was in on that. What was the guy's name? Kolaric or something like that? Second team All-Missouri Valley Conference linebacker at Northern Iowa. Wanted to come to Michigan State. Michigan State talked to him. Michigan State, from my understanding, told him they didn't quite have a scholarship for him just yet. He'd have to wait till December. I don't know if they meant this December or next December. Nebraska wanted him right now. Nebraska got him. I'm not sure if he's exactly what Michigan State was looking for. I mean, Tucker's going to be an open book. They're going to look everywhere. So do they look in the Mid-America Conference and find the best linebacker in the conference and have a way of reaching out to that guy and open the door to someone like that? I think it's entirely possible, yes. Linebacker, tight end. Offensive tackle? Possibly. 3 grad transfers? I don't know if you want to take like 7 of them, but they could use some help. You're exactly right about that. But those are the positions I would expect. Let me find my place here. All right. Mr. Hockey Wings 40 GGG says, who is a more realistic option for Michigan State? Jaden Denegal or Justin Martin? It's too early to say. Too early to say. In my opinion. Talking about quarterbacks. Hopefully we get to see some of those guys in summer camps. No summer camps this past year. Hope we get a chance to do it and cover it for you guys at SpartanMag.com again next summer. By the way, it's almost Thanksgiving, right? Remember when the pandemic started? Now, it's hard for me to know everything because this is my first pandemic. It's my first pandemic. But way back when that happened, and we were all nervous. Didn't know what was going to happen in a lot of ways. And didn't know what was going to happen with sports of the least consequence. But back then in March, I said, hey, when you get to be my age, the months go by quickly, and it's going to be Thanksgiving before you know it. And I tell you what, in my opinion, for me, March and April and May, but especially April, May, went by, bam, like that. Maybe it wasn't that case for you guys. Everybody's got a different experience. But when you get older, years and months just go by quicker. But that went by fast. And then summer was like a regular summer for me. Coaching baseball, getting out with the kids, all that stuff. Some things you didn't do. But that went by kind of fast. Football didn't start till late, so that made it seem like fall lasted longer. So things have kind of slowed down now. But all of a sudden, boom, it's going to be Thanksgiving, then it's going to be Christmas carols and holidays and so forth. But I said, don't worry, in a few minutes it's going to be Thanksgiving. And in my opinion, it kind of has gone by fast. But when I said that, I didn't think that we would be where we are now with everything, where all of a sudden, boom, second wave, which a lot of people predicted, and a lot of numbers are worse than ever, but I hope everybody stays safe. And it looks like there's good news coming with the vaccine, right? Good news coming. So let's just let's do our part. I don't mean to be Mr. Public statement guy, but it's Thanksgiving. Hope everybody's doing well. Jim McCarthy says, comp, with scum, with Michigan's 21 basketball class so strong, if cards fall just right, especially on Michigan State's side, could we be looking at Duke, North Carolina level hype head-to-head? Thanks in advance. That's only if Michigan State and Michigan win like Duke and North Carolina. Beeline, of course, had some really good years, but people have been wondering about that Duke and North Carolina hype. No, it's never going to get to that level of hype. Duke, North Carolina hype is off the chains, right? But Michigan State's been good through the Beeline years. You know, Izzo and Beeline had some good head-to-heads, and Michigan State's one of the best basketball rivalries in the country. Duke, North Carolina's number 1. Kentucky, Louisville's way up there. Who else? You know, Cincinnati, Xavier on kind of a different level. Indiana, Purdue, of course. And Michigan State, it's not at the North Carolina, Duke level, Duke, North Carolina level, but it's right there, not as big as Louisville and Kentucky, but right beneath there. Some may argue it's bigger than Louisville, Kentucky, but if you've been in Kentucky, you know how that basketball rivalry is. It's more of an every day, all year thing. Michigan State basketball rivalry is a big thing the week of the game, but not all year like it is in Kentucky. So, and Indiana Purdue, similar. So, level of hype, no. But you're wondering if it's going to be there at the Duke North Carolina level. Now, Beeline had it there, and Juwan Howard is recruiting well. It remains to be seen if, as he gets his players in and the Beeline ethic goes away from them, if he can win with highly ranked recruits. NBA players usually do not make good college coaches. Now, he seems to be a very detailed, organized guy. Phil Martelli's there. That'll help. Just like it helped Beeline when he hired Yaklich. So, just because he's recruiting well, don't put him in Duke, North Carolina just yet. Tom Coyle says, Happy Tuesday, JC. Happy Tuesday to you. Ben Paris says, could we go after James Blackman? I don't know. Are you talking about the quarterback from Florida State? Is he transferring? Yeah, if he's transferring, I don't know. I mean, he showed a lot of ability, a lot of potential, but Michigan State went after JT Daniels, reached out to him, and not much interest. Costello, they were interested in him, not much interest, but let's wait and see what Peyton Thorne looks like here for the next couple of weeks. I'm intrigued to see what that looks like. Peyton Fleetmeyer says Rocky needs to move to linebacker. I'm not sure he's fast enough to play linebacker. Aaron Mays says, Comp, do you think the line of order in regards to recruiting should be O-line and D-line, linebackers, and quarterback? Talking about for this year in 2021, I think it's best available at every position, right? Or 2022, 2021, they've got a commitment from Hampton Fay. So 2022, I mean, it's everything. Linebackers, linemen, everything. Old Tuck says, why do you think Michigan State has struggled since Charlie Gant to find and sign a quality high school tight end? It's a great question because, I mean, they utilized the tight end. D'Antonio wanted to utilize the tight end, and they still didn't recruit all that great at tight end in recent years. I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that. It comes down to evaluation, right? I mean, Jack Camper was evaluated and recruited as a tight end, was a tight end for a few weeks. They moved him to defensive end, and he's okay at defensive end. He's not a guy that's going to be making plays, but he can hold the point a little bit and not get road graded. There have been others. We went over this a couple of weeks ago. Noah Davis. But I don't know. Even Sokol, always had trouble with his hands. Not real consistent there. Learned to become a functional blocker. I think he's taxi squadding in the NFL. But he was a high school quarterback, right? So, Matt Dotson was more of a split end at Cincinnati Moeller. Had the tight end frame, putting weight on him. He's a 4-star, highly recruited. So I think there was a chance he was going to be pretty good this year and then would have a chance to come back for a 5th year because this year does not count against scholarships. Jonah Wilson, good point. Deion Sims was a stud, and that was a big recruiting victory out of Orchard Lake St. Mary's. NFL player. That was a good one. Let me finish up the mailbag. One other thing about the portal. Michigan State was interested in Michael Dana when he was transferring from Central Michigan. Went to Michigan, did not start, but played on third down. Had a decent year and got drafted. Michael Dana was like a first-team All-MAC guy. So, again, you look at the Mid-America Conference, look to see who the best defensive and pass-rushing defensive end is, and it wouldn't shock me if Michigan State went after a guy like that. I think Panashuk, he's a senior. He's had some active moments this year. Will he go ahead and try his hand in the NFL draft this spring? Is he a borderline guy or does he want to come back for a year? Good question. But there's a chance he could leave. The other starter, Drew Beasley, is functional, not bad. Camper, functional, not bad. Fletcher, thank you very much, shows some potential, but the door is open for a Michael Dana type of guy to come in and push for a starting job right away if he can play the run and rush the passer with some natural pass rush ability. Avery Dunn is an interesting one who's been on the travel team. He's not been on the field yet. Not sure what he can do at the point of attack. He probably has to put some more lead in his pants, as they say. But I think he's got a little bit of a chance to have that quickness, hip flexibility, ankle flexibility, turn the corner type of pass rusher in the future. In the meantime, if you can get a grad transfer from a MAC school, and some of you might be saying, well, why settle for a MAC school? Why not go after somebody at Wake Forest or Virginia Tech that's good? Well, anyone who's good at those schools, if they're looking to leave, they're looking to play for a national championship. They're looking to go to Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State. They're not going to take a lateral move to Michigan State. When Michigan State gets guys like that, like the defensive tackle from Nebraska a couple of years ago, he was a guy that helped because Michigan State was out of defensive tackles that year. And he was serviceable, wasn't great. He wasn't great at Nebraska either, but he wasn't starting at Nebraska. So he goes somewhere for a new start, started at Michigan State. I think he lost the starting job by the end of the year. Might have gotten dinged up a little bit. I forget his name. But if you're getting somebody from a lateral program like that, chances are they might not have been so great at that place. So you might get a Band-Aid from that. I think you have a better chance to get a good player from a standout from a mid-major, like a veteran. Sugar from Parts Unknown says, how is the baseball player doing at tight end? You're talking about Adam Burghorst. He says, also, if you were told today you could be his agent for either baseball or football, which would you choose? And what would he have to do to make it in the sport you choose? I'd go baseball just because it's longer careers, bigger contracts for the most part. He's a big guy, throws hard. Football tight end, he had that one pass go through his hands. If that's an indication of his hands, that's a concern. If he's not already playing at tight end right now with Michigan State's tight end situation, that's a concern. So just looking at that, if you're talking pro prospects, it's a guy that's already been drafted by the Pittsburgh Pirates, turned him down to come to Michigan State. I would think he's got a better chance there. You can at least sign an early contract, get paid there, and then you got a chance. Baseball, there's a reason they draft 40 guys a year, or they used to, because guys don't always make it. But I guess he was topping out at 90. I was impressed and surprised that he joined the Michigan State baseball team and immediately was, a guy that was utilized quite frequently. So as he lifts weights as a tight end, does that start to work against his velocity as a pitcher? Maybe so. So could he make a decision like that and say, look, I'm just going to focus on baseball? Maybe so. The more he lifts weights, I don't know where that velocity is going to go. We've seen like Jeff Samardzija, major league pitcher, wide receiver at Notre Dame, but you're as a wide receiver, different body type. He's lifting weights differently than a tight end defensive end would. So that might be a decision that might have to come down the pike somewhat soon. Now, if he makes the switch to baseball, he won't have as much of his scholarship paid. It'd be a fraction of it. College baseball players, they only get like 10% scholarship, 20% scholarship, not much. They're really the most underfunded athletes in intercollegiate athletics in terms of the number of scholarships in relation to the roster size and in relation to youth participation. So Burghorst, baseball, if I were the agent and you're trying to pick a sport, that would be the way. But you bring up another point about would he be likely to make a decision this winter? I don't know. I've not heard anything about that, but sometimes it just some things make sense. And with that size at 6'6", with the proper mechanics, kinetic chain, there's probably a lot more velocity in there. There's probably somebody that thinks you're throwing 89, 90 now. As you get older, with your frame, we can get 95 out of you. That's enough. if he got some movement and everything. I don't know. Steve from Okemos says, interesting comment from Coach Tucker's press conference about the transfer portal. How many players do you see leaving, and how many might we see coming in by this method for next season? Just a couple nights ago, we talked about this on the bunker, and in terms of people that were likely to leave, I included Mustafa Khalifa in that group because I didn't know that he had opted out. Now today we learned that he had opted out. I think that bodes a little better for Khalifa. It looked to me like he had just gotten passed by because he was not on the dress list. Passed by walk-ons like Van Opstal. So that's not the case. He's opted out. So they say they're supporting players in their decision to opt out. So they've not made an evaluation of Khalifa yet. So 3 nights ago, I would have said Khalifa, a real good chance he goes to the portal and he's done. Now we hear this. I'm like, no, now there's a better chance he'll hang on through the winter. He'll get evaluated in the spring. Unless something else happens in the meantime. So the confidence meter that Khalifa was going to be staying, I had below 10% 3 days ago. Now I'd put it back up maybe 51%. We'll have to wait and see. The next couple months are critical, as they say. I don't know. Larice Nelson is another guy. Didn't make the travel team. Haven't heard anything about him. Today, Jaden Reed just kind of mentioned in passing that Larice Nelson is banged up. So he got injured at some point. That's why he's not playing. He's a senior. Could always come back for obvious reasons. 3 days ago, I would have thought that's a transfer portal guy. Maybe go back home to Florida. But hearing that he's injured, maybe he loves it still with the new staff. Maybe he wants to be evaluated. I don't know. So those 2 guys, 3 days ago, I would have given you an answer, a definite answer, and I would have been definitely wrong because I didn't know all the information. I look at someone like Javez Alexander. He's never been on the field. I would assume that might be a guy that, that they move on from. Damon Kaler, I haven't seen him on the field. I haven't seen him on the dress list. Haven't seen him in any 2-deep. Haven't heard a coach ever talk about him. He was committed to Michigan State before he came to Michigan State's camp. I saw him at Michigan State's camp, and he was not great at Michigan State's camp. I'm not stunned that he's had a hard time getting into the playing group. So would that be somebody that I would anticipate possibly being a candidate to go to the portal? Yes. But that's what I would have said about Khalifa and Nelson, but at least those guys have been on the field a little bit. Nothing against Kaler. I know he's working hard. I'm just calling it like I see it. All right, let's go back to and that's all for the mailbag portion of the show. Now we're going to go to the chat area, finish your questions, and we'll call it a night. Paul Simmons says, what's your take on this offensive line as being the main culprit in our poor offensive play, passing and running the ball? Great to have Paul Simmons here. Paul Simmons, he's a dandy. We talked about this earlier in the show, and I mentioned it in the Underground Bunker message board earlier today also about just looking at what happened in the run game and that Michigan State's offensive line blocking was actually better per play than people might think. In the Indiana game, Michigan State averaged 3.3 yards per carry, which is not great. Anthony Williams has one of those carries for -1. Elijah Collins, 3 carries for 1.7. You take them out of it, and Hayward carried the ball 5 times. Simmons carried the ball 5 times. So not many tailback runs, first of all. A low number of rushing yardage. But Michigan State's run game was not used because they got behind so early. But anyway, in case you missed it, I just mentioned that Hayward and Simmons combined 10 carries, 42 yards. That's 4.2 yards per carry. And that's not bad, 4.2. It's not great, but it's not bad. You're only talking 19 tailback runs. 10. Wait a minute. I've got 19. Let me check it here. Tailback runs. 5, 10, 13, 14. 14 tailback runs. Did I say 19? They only had 14 tailback runs. So it's hard to measure offensive line run blocking when you only have 14 tailback runs. And the 14 tailback runs were not terribly bad, averaging 3.3 per carry, 4.2 with your top 2 tailbacks. They just didn't get a chance to get into the run game because, boom, they were down 17-0. And they only had 4 tailback runs by the time they were down 24-0. So they had to go to pass game more, going against blitzes. So run blocking was not terrible against Indiana. Against Iowa, Michigan State averaged 3 yards per carry. Not great, but like I said earlier, Iowa is only allowing 2.8 yards per carry, which is the best run defense in the Big Ten. So you're averaging 3.0 against the best run defense in the Big Ten. Not bad. Mel Tucker said Michigan State had 15 run plays against Iowa that were graded out as being efficient run plays. They just need to stop turning over the darn ball and see if they can get into a balance of, passing and run game like they did against Michigan. Don't turn it over. Easier said than done, but the quarterback was at fault for 2 of them last week and a 5th-string tailback for the other one. Good chance those 2 guys don't see the field this weekend. That takes away 3 of your turnovers right there. I'm not looking to blame anybody. I'm just calling it like I see it, right? And it's too bad about Williams because he has some of that burst. He might have the most burst of any of the running backs. Didn't play the first 2 games because he had to get some stuff straightened out off the field a little bit. Nothing legal, just had to get some accountability issues in place. Had a couple carries against Iowa in mop-up time. Gets a carry. Also against Iowa, they threw him a little swing pass, and it was not accurate, so he kind of had to twist this way, and then he got forward maybe 5 or 6 yards. If it had been on target, maybe he can make a guy miss 8 yards or more. With his versatility and ability with some of that burst, I can see why they wanted to give Anthony Williams a shot. And Anthony Williams he played really well in the bowl game at the end of last year. He gets 1 carry against Indiana and fumbles, and people like me are criticizing, like, well, why is that guy in the game? I'm not really criticizing, but I can understand why he was given a shot. It's because so many of these running backs are kind of even, and nobody's like taking the bull by the horn and becoming the feature guy. They think Jordan Simmons can become the feature guy, but not yet. Brandon Wright got a little bit of time last couple of games, not in this game. So they're still trying to figure things out. That's where, but it's really hard to get 6 running backs time, right? They traveled 5 running backs to Iowa. I don't know. It's uncomfortable. But you're asking offensive line, is it the main culprit in poor offensive play? Against Rutgers, Michigan State only punted the ball twice. Offense against Iowa and offense in this game, I know 7 points in 8 quarters. That's terrible. The first drive, Michigan State's driving okay. 3rd down and 2, then run zone read option and fumble it. Looked like that was Simmons' fault. Not you, Simmons. Paul Simmons. I'm talking about Jordan Simmons. It looked like Lombardi was doing zone read option and kept it in his gut, pulled his hands out, and maybe he didn't put it in firmly enough. Maybe they've not worked that play enough. I mentioned this last night on the alumni Zoom that I remember Urban Meyer talking about players or teams that dabble in the zone read option. He says they're just kind of a mistake waiting to happen because if you don't major in it all the time, it takes such feel and organization and choreography that you can really, choke on your Cheerios there a little bit if you don't rep it a lot. And that looked to me like a team that hasn't really majored in it because they left it on the carpet. Now it's 4th and 5. They punt the ball. They got to the 38-yard line when they did that, and they would never get any deeper than that. They matched that later. Peyton Thorne got to the 38, but they never penetrated the 35-yard line. 3rd and 2 zone read option, carpet. So I'm not blaming the offensive line on that one. And, your first 5 drives, that's one of them. The other 4, they turned it over on 3 of the other 4. Lombardi, and Williams. Can't blame the offensive line in any of those. You look up the scoreboard, you're down 24-0. It's not the offensive line's fault at that point. Not that it's their fault in the Rutgers game. They were terrible, but the first culprit, field position and turnovers, and that is a good defense. Indiana still should they be able to persevere and score a point, like a rouge? Could they score a rouge? You guys know what a rouge is? I'd stand up and get my CFL helmet, but I might trip over something. A rouge is in the CFL when you miss a field goal. You get 1 point. So once in a while, if you're lucky, you'll turn on a CFL game, and the score will be Hamilton 1, Toronto nothing. It's beautiful, kind of. What was I just talking about? Yeah, but to at least score a point, you would think that'd be possible. But okay, so you're down 24-0. Indiana's a good defense, people. I'm serious. I mean, Ohio State might go and score 50 against them. They do that against a number of teams. But Indiana's got a good defense, and we talked about this a number of times last week. They're tricky with things. They two-gap, and they stop with a standard number in the box, and they keep too deep. They stop the run while keeping too deep. They don't always keep too deep. They might have two deep safeties. They might blitz a corner or a slot to give them an extra number in the box, but they don't tip it off. They're very crafty with what they do. They change their coverages. It's a good defense. I'm not saying it's the 78 Steelers, but it's a good defense. So now you're going against a good defense that knows you have to pass, and it's Peyton Thorne's debut. And he's got 3 quarters to work with. He didn't score. He didn't cross the 35. I understand all that. But not the offensive line's fault either. They're trying to figure out who their quarterback is. First of all, right? It would be nice if you had a great offensive line and got the run game just churning and then makes it easier for the quarterback, but they're not there. As Tucker says, it's all inclusive. It's complementary football. One leads to another. It's all a big puzzle piece, right? Tom Coyle says, I'm with Coach Tucker. This is an evaluation situation. Until this COVID nonsense gets put to bed, nothing is real. Well, I wouldn't go that far. The victory over Michigan was real. The other 3 games don't count. Paul Simmons says, he got out of the pocket well and gave himself some time to try to make a play. I agree, and that's a headache for defensive coordinators, talking about Peyton Thorne. And he's got that relationship with Jayden Reed, and that came to the forefront a couple of times real nicely. In the pocket, they were blitzing the heck out of him, which is great because he can look at film and he really saw the bullets flying out there. They're blitzing and they've got strange coverages. He saw the real deal, the real shooting match. He saw a real helping of Big Ten coverage, more difficult than what Michigan's playing right now. So Thorne saw it, and could he have stayed in the pocket a little longer a couple of times? Yes, and he admitted that after the game. So we'll see. Mr. Bowman says, Bone is here. Hi, Comp. Cartero917 says, I think we have to give Thorne the starting job and Day as the backup. This year is crazy, and he seems to be a guy that could help us in the future. So we have to give the young guys a chance, in my opinion. Can't argue with that. We'll wait and see what it looks like. But that cover 2 interception for a year 4 guy on a 1st and 10 in a season of flux where you're trying to keep your job, that decision can't happen. A bad throw here and there, okay. That decision. Coyle says, we are not made to beat Iowa right now. They're too physical. And that was interesting to see when Iowa came out with 2 tight ends and ran their power stuff at Michigan State, which didn't surprise me because Iowa tried to tippy-toe around Northwestern, and Iowa only had like 19 tailback runs against Northwestern and 50 pass attempts. It was the stupidest pass-to-run ratio by a Big Ten team, a talented Big Ten team, that I think I've ever seen. So after that, you just knew Kirk Ferentz was going to take back over control from his son and say, no, we're going back to our staples. They had that scripted, and they really hit Michigan State in the crotch early. They were good. They deserved it. Then they went out and destroyed Minnesota, right? So Iowa, they wanted to test that too. They wanted to test a 4-2-5 to see if they were heavy enough in the rear to withstand it. In Michigan State, they were losing collisions here and there, but Michigan State's biggest problem in run defense that day were 5 or 6 plays of gap integrity, not being in your gap, not physically getting steamrolled, but not being in your gap. I will say this, Xavier Henderson coming up to the linebacker level as the box linebacker, box safety, taking on offensive linemen hard, Michael Dowell spent most of the day at nickel that game. He didn't play nickel against Indiana. He was a safety. and he would come down and play nickel. Angelo Gross was the nickel against Indiana, and he was a safety. Unless it was 2-by-2 formation, then he would come down and play like a symmetrical opposite nickel. That's where he's got some of that flexibility. He can play nickel, or he can go back and play safety. If it was a 3-by-1, he would be a deeper safety, and usually Xavier Henderson was up as the third safety, taking the number 3. The furthest receiver to the outside is the number 1. The next one is the number 2. The furthest to the inside is the number 3. Xavier would have the number 3. If the number 3 went in motion, they would rock and roll, where Henderson would rock back and Dowell would roll over. So Dowell has that flexibility where he can play the nickel like he did against Indiana, or one of the 2 deep safeties against Indiana. I'm sorry, like he did against Iowa. He was a nickel. Or he could play either safety. And sometimes on a 3-by-1, if they're man-to-man, he might be deep middle safety, or if he goes in motion, all of a sudden he's manned up on him, basically press. Takes a ton of versatility to do that. We'll have to wait and see whether he's got the speed to turn his hips. If I were scheming against that, I would motion and get him into a one-on-one and take him deep and see if he can run. I think he's pretty good safety and pretty good nickel guy and all that. But I don't know if Dowell's been tested deep a whole lot. We'll have to wait and see if he checks all the boxes. But right now he's useful. And Iowa went after the Michigan State's 4-2-5-ness. But it was gap integrity was the main problem. But Henderson throwing his helmet in there, Dowell doing their best, and they were okay for one game. Henderson's been good all season. But if they had to play Iowa every single week, they wouldn't. They'd be a 4-3. They wouldn't be doing 4-2-5. It can work for a game. And I always mention the TCU Rose Bowl game against Wisconsin. It can work. You can run and outnumber the ball carriers, get off blocks. But to see it against Iowa, it can work. But you've got lighter framed guys like Gross and Dowell and Henderson that are taking on blocks and absorbing hits that are made for a 230-pound linebacker. And they can do it for a while, can't do it for 12 games. So if on your schedule you've got Iowa once, maybe you can get through it. But if you're playing Iowa and Wisconsin, and let's say, I don't know, Gary Moeller comes back and starts coaching Michigan or something, then you might need to carry some more 4-3. Trainham says, at Old Tuck, Charlie Gant was actually a John L. Smith commitment from this last class. We got lucky to have Brian Linthicum in from, I think, Clemson. That's right, Linthicum was a transfer from Clemson. The position has trended down since Josiah Price left. Exactly right. Tom Coyle says, St. Mac and Duplain helped put one on Michigan, and that saves the season for me. Braden Christie says, what I learned, Rocky wasn't related to the Lombardo mop. I don't know what that means. Oh. Braden Christie says, when I learned Rocky was not related to the Lombardi trophy, I wanted his scholarship removed. Braden Christie, very demanding. Rob South says, what's up, fellas? Rob South is late. That's his 4th tardy of the semester. 1 more, and there's going to be detention. 2 more, and there's a note to your parents. Peyton Fleetmeyer wants us to know that he's chilling. Chris Trainham says, at Old Tuck, sadly, Jamal Lyles never developed as a blocker. We started missing on our plan A, B tight end targets like Luke Farrell to Ohio State in 2016 and Luke, I can never pronounce that guy's last name, Lachey at Iowa 2020. Chris Trainham's got it all figured out. Thanks for producing that, Chris. Great job. Chris Trainham says, further compounded by Jack Camper switching to defensive end. But that also indicated that Camper was not what they wanted at tight end. Matt Dotson being hurt and not being a good blocker. Noah Davis going to Cincinnati. Likewise, Gillison can't block. Like I said, Gillison not a terrible blocker as he used to be. Maybe I've lowered the bar, but I've seen him do a couple of good things here and there, which is a couple more than last year. Mr. Bowman says, I hope Coach Tuck starts to give guys their walking papers soon. You guys want dismissals, but that's all well and good, but you're not going to go on waivers and get somebody like for this weekend. You can't You can't line up and play with air. You need human beings. And chances are the human beings that you have are good to have. You never know when you're going to hit a bunch of injuries either. Simmons says, who needs their walking papers? He says, great point on the loss of the pre-conference games. Very challenging to know what you have or solidify your scheme when your only games are conference games. And that's, everybody has that situation, but when you're a first-year coach and you don't get those practices, that's just where he is. In terms of checkpoints of a season, he is just coming out of game number 4 against Central Michigan, getting into the Big Ten opener against Northwestern. That's where he is, Mel Tucker, in terms of knowing what he's got as a first-year coach. Doors fan says MSU overscheduled in the non-conference this year. Yes, they did. They were stupid, and they were somewhat lucky that it didn't come to pass that they didn't have to play BYU in Miami. That was stupid scheduling. Once the Big Ten went to 9 games, Michigan State should have said, okay, we got to get rid of one of these, like all the other teams did. Like Michigan got rid of Arkansas, I think it was. When the Big Ten went from 8 to 9 games, you get rid of one of your non-conference games. That's just the smart way to do it. You don't saddle a coach with 2 of those games like that. You're just making it harder for yourself than it needs to be. You don't see Barry Alvarez doing that, do you? Do you? No. So that was stupid. They got around it this year, though. I'm hearing that the Big Ten is going to be going back to 8 games. Wait and see. If that happens, you heard it here first. I hear they're going back to 8 games. Kazion Petty says, I hope Peyton Throne starts. Sorry if I got your name wrong. Doors Fan 91 says, I just lost it. Where'd it go? Doors Fan says, BYU and the U, give me 3 cupcakes in the non-conference. It is wins that matter. I agree. That's the smart way to do it. That is the smart way to do it. We're getting close to wrapping up here. I think I lost my place again. Rats. Oh, for crying out loud. Like I always say, it's a good thing this is not a bus that I'm driving. All you people would be in danger, including other motorists. All right, here we go. It's not scrolling for me, though. I'm all out of mailbag questions, so I'm trying to get to your questions. If I can get this screen to work. Okay, I'm losing my patience now. All right, let's go back to here. Go back to the small print. Lost it. All right, here we go. Paul Simmons says, hey, Comp, keep doing what you're doing. You too, Paul. Paul says, what would you like to see in terms of the rest of the recruiting class? Obviously, depending on departures, our needs will change, but are there any glaring omissions that we need to fill in? I would think linebacker. Don't know what's going on there. Detroit Spartan, nice platoon. Jacob Terry says, what are you feeling on Estime hearing rumblings of Notre Dame coming in? We talked about Estime earlier. They're going to have to keep recruiting him. Notre Dame wouldn't surprise me. Michigan State was in on that running back from Louisiana that I liked a lot. Was it Spriggs? Was that his name? Ended up at Notre Dame. I thought he was good. Notre Dame's looking pretty good right now. They're doing a good job with that program, right? Wow. Detroit Spartan says, love the shirt. Thank you. Got my Ted Lindsay on. This is when he went around, I think it was at Maple Leaf Gardens, and he was acting like his stick was a gun, and I think he was shooting people in the upper deck because they were saying not so nice things to him. I think that's the story. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. Mr. Hockey Wings 40 GG says, what are your expectations for MSU hockey this year? Continued improvement. And they were improved last year, and they flirted with the regular season Big Ten championship. Their pairwise ratings were not good last year because they had some early season losses. But Dan Cole, Michigan State's hockey coach, made an interesting point yesterday at his Zoom press conference, something that I had not considered. Michigan State ended up with 32 points in the Big Ten. Penn State won the Big Ten regular season title with 38 points. And there was like a 4-way tie for second with 35 points each. And Danton Cole said, the way I look at it, we had that overtime game against Penn State, and we lost in overtime by a goal. and it was kind of a fluke goal, bounced off two of our players and then went right to a guy's stick, and he scored, lost in overtime. He says if we get that goal, one goal, instead of 32 points, we've got 35. Instead of 38, they've got 35. And it's like a six-way tie for first place in the Big Ten. The Big Ten was an absolute mosh pit in hockey last year. The parity is staggering. Michigan State was right in it. Previous years, they were down at the bottom, and the other ones had some parity. Michigan State was right in the middle of it. Didn't quite finish, and that's been the way for several years. But they were right there. They lose Kodorinko. He was a horse. But got Mitchell Lewandowski coming back. He's a playmaker a couple of years ago. Last year, not so much. Danton Cole said last year he was coming off an injury in surgery in the summer and wasn't quite trusting everything. He expects him to be better. Joshua Jager's a guy I liked a lot as a rugged freshman last year. And when Cole was asked about players that have improved, he mentioned Jagger, that has really improved his physicality and gotten bigger. I'm like, improved his physicality? He was already the most physical dude probably in a lot of ways. And he says, look for Jagger to be really improved. I was like, wow, okay. That's a sophomore that's going to have an impact. He feels good about his guys. Feels good about his centerman. They've got like 9 freshmen coming in, but like the sophomores, Nodler, the kid from Oak Park, and Mueller, the kid from Switzerland, those guys are okay last year. Now as sophomores, they should be able to take it up a notch. On defense, they're more veteran. The Krieger brothers are juniors now. Sisana is one of the best puck-carrying defensemen in the Big Ten, one of the best. He's a junior. Maybe could have went pro after last year. So those 4 are back. They'll have 2 freshmen and the other defenseman. It'll be 4 freshmen competing for those 2 spots. He feels good about it. The 2 freshmen won't play together. They'll be mixed among the veterans. But there's a true freshman coming in from Hungary, Christoph Papp, or Papp, P-A-P-P. Hungary does not produce many hockey players at all. He was pretty good at an early age. Moved to L.A. to play hockey at like age 10. I don't know what his parents... what's going on there. But I mean, seriously, in Hungary, there was only like 3 rinks in the whole country or something. Moved to LA and was still real good. Then he moved to Michigan to play for Bell Tire when he was 14. Played 2 years for Bell Tire. Then he played 2 years for Honey Baked. Went to the USHL. Was like the second leading scorer for Des Moines last year or something. He's a freshman. Anyway, Danton Cole is saying that this guy, the freshman from the Hungarian kid, really fast, good skill, and just has a skill set about him that the rest of his players don't have. Now, he's going to be a thin little guy coming in, so I don't know. It might take a while. I'm not sure. They were kind of thinking the same thing about the Mueller kid from Switzerland last year, but the Papp kid is like the number 3 center right now, so we'll have to wait and see. Goalie, DeRitter, the kid from Fenton, came in highly recruited, highly regarded, never quite won the job from last year. Can't remember the guy that was the goalie last year. But anyway, now it's DeRitter's deal. So we'll have to wait and see what he looks like. They're hoping for the best. But like Cole said, he expects more balanced goal scoring this year and more goals, and he expects the defense to be better. Add it all up, if the Big Ten is the same as it was last year, he expects to compete for he didn't come out and say it, but they're expecting to compete for a Big Ten title, perhaps, maybe. Michigan looked really good this weekend. I know it's early, so it might be harder to win the Big Ten this year than last year. There might not be as much parity, but they're going to be better. But hard to get in the NCAA tournament unless you... I don't know what the pairwise is going to look like this year with no non-conference games. I'm not sure. The whole Ivy League is not playing. They're not playing winter sports. So getting into the NCAA tournament will be easier this year because some programs are not playing. I'm losing my voice. We're going to have to shut it down, I think. Detroit Spartan says Danton was born to coach Michigan State hockey. Mr. Bowman says, I've noticed that wide receiver, can't think of his name, that killed Michigan has disappeared. I think he has 2 catches in the last 2 games. Talking about Ricky White. Yeah? Yeah, he has. One of the things he had working for him in the Michigan game, it was mostly man-to-man, and Michigan had no film on him because he had never played. And he was running those double routes and just torching them. So it's a combination. Michigan State thought that their corners were not all that good. And Michigan State had Ricky White, someone who could do things well. Okay. Iowa was more of a zone team. Indiana was more of a zone team. Those double moves, not as conducive to his game. He's more of a man-to-man guy now. He'll have to learn to sit down in some areas, and that comes with time also. And now we're getting into my Michael Fletcher era. Cartero 917 says, any word on Keon Coleman, the wide receiver from Louisiana? No, I've not heard anything. Chris Trinum says, just posted on the board, Maryland did not practice tonight. They have gone a week without practice and haven't released COVID testing data during the off week. Not a good sign. Mr. Boneman says, hey, Comp, with Spartan Stadium almost 100 years old, are there any talks about building a newer, nicer one? Are you crazy? Come here, Mr. T. Boneman. Come here. You want to build a new stadium? It was built in 1924. There were a lot of stadiums built in 1924 in college football around that era, and those are cathedrals of the gridiron. Now, NFL, they got to have all the fancy whatever for the, fancy, so it's comfortable and the luxury suites and all that stuff. No, they've been playing football there since 1924. There's not many things in this country that are in use that were built in 1924, especially in sports. Major League Baseball made the mistake of getting rid of all their old stadiums, except Wrigley and Fenway. I know that better sight lines, maybe bigger concourses, luxury suites, but no. That's an historical acreage of land. And no, I've not heard any word about building a new stadium. No. Now, refurbishing some things here and there, possibly, but no. So, Mr. T-Bone, Mr. T-Bone, don't make that mistake again. Paul Simmons says, we likely need to see continued improvement and success in recruiting to keep the Wolves at bay. Talking about whether people are going to remain happy with the program. Recruiting, yeah, but player development and just having a good... Got to win games, of course. How do you win games? Look at Wisconsin. Iowa lost those 2 games earlier in the year, and they're going to be kicking themselves the rest of the year because that team should be 4-0 right now. But, hey, blocking and tackling, know your assignments, don't turn it over. It sounds easy, but it's hard to do. Like I said in the post-game VCast, a lot of football games are not won, they're lost. Michigan State has lost 3 games this year. Iowa lost 2 games this year. If you're just solid enough that you don't beat yourself, which was a lot of what Mark D'Antonio did for years, just get to that level of solid play, blocking, tackling, which is hard to do because while you're blocking, somebody's trying to defeat your block. And while you're tackling, someone's trying to block you, knock you on your tail. So you have to have some physical ability, which comes with recruiting, but player development, knowing what to do, being in your gap. Noah Harvey's got to get better at that. Things like that. You're watching some of these teams like Northwestern, even Purdue, but Wisconsin. A lot of the middle weights in the Big Ten, or even the lower weights, are like Minnesota last year. They had some players, yeah, but they play with quickness, and they were smart, and they got to areas, and they executed. So getting a bunch of 4-stars won't necessarily guarantee it. Now, if you can have a bunch of 4-stars and get the good ones and get them to buy in, and they play within that type of system, 4 and 5 stars, then you're up in that Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State range where they're getting NFL guys, but also there's a dedication to the program. That's kind of special. Is it the Jimmies and Joes or the X's and O's? A little bit of both, but player development and that hard-nosed will. Football's a grim sport, and you need guys with hard-nosed will to sacrifice their bodies to be at the point of attack and win in the point of attack. Michigan's had that problem for years. They've got a diva problem, and they do again this year. Some highly ranked guys. Now, if you want to win a national championship, I think it's pretty much been shown that in the internet ranking era that you have to have a certain percentage of 4 and 5 stars on your roster to have a shot at it. And some people might say, well, yeah, back in the old days, Michigan was going to get all 4 and 5 stars just because they're Michigan, and so did Notre Dame because it sold recruiting magazines and stuff, or clicks and all that. And there might be some truth to that. And Alabama's going to, if they bring a guy in that's a 3-star, they automatically just give him a 4-star. Although I don't know if they did that with Ingram out of Flint, the Heisman Trophy winner. I think he was a 3-star, stayed a 3-star. Oops. So, but the one litmus test on that whole deal was Clemson. Before Clemson arrived at what they are now, they had 3 top 10 recruiting classes in a 5-year period. And they were not a blue blood, football factory. They were not a blue blood. And their fan base is not such that's like, okay, we're a recruiting website or publication. Let's make sure we got Michigan and Notre Dame and Alabama in the top 5 because they're the people that they buy a lot of the magazines. No, Clemson's not like that. So they did not have that kind of stroke, and they were not a blue blood, but they showed up in the top 10 of the recruiting rankings. And then the top 10 program came, and now they are what they are. Now they are recruiting like that on a regular basis. But that was like the most credibility that recruiting rankings have probably ever received in their existence. And no one really talks about that. That Clemson was the litmus test. So if you want to play for national championships, yes, you need some 4 and 5 stars, Paul Simmons. You need that. But can you get to like that top 10 without it? Yeah. D'Antonio did it. And it gets back to, recruiting, but I mean, just look at Wisconsin. Just get some hammers. Develop some hammers. Part of that's evaluation. But Tucker's going to try to recruit at a high level. And if he starts to win, he will increase his scope and be able to recruit at a higher and higher level. Then, can he also avoid the diva situation? He's got the temperament to do it if he can get there. Solo Beer Guy says, Detroit Spartan says, we could use Fulton and Willikis about right now. I never saw what Fulton looked like. I never really saw what Willikis looked like. It's a good point, though. Solo Beer Guy says, the meritocracy worries me a little bit. I know there's good that can come from it, but it can also go downhill quick. And you're right about that also. Detroit Spartan says, Comp, if you have time, explain how there's going to be growing pains with Thorne for those expecting Joe Montana out of the gate. Yeah. I mean, he's a redshirt freshman. I would compare him to Brian Lewerke as a redshirt freshman. Remember when he played a little bit in 2016, broke his leg against Michigan? I know, some of you are expecting Trevor Lawrence, true freshman, compete for a national championship. I mean, those guys are rare. Tua Tagovailoa. I've only had 4 years to learn that one. Tua Tagovailoa. I always want to say Tua Navratilova. But anyway, everyone saw Tua do it, but he came off the bench as a freshman, won a national championship. But those guys are rare and special. So I started to write this on Sunday night, never put it together. Look at someone like C.J. Beathard. Remember C.J. Beathard, quarterback for Iowa, when Michigan State played against them for the 2015 Big Ten Championship? Good player as a junior, right? Good player. And then he came back as a senior, had a good season. NFL, late round draft pick, bouncing around. He's with the 49ers now. He's a pro. Good. But what was he as a freshman? No one remembers, right? Well, he redshirted. Then as a redshirt freshman, he sat the bench. Then as a redshirt sophomore, he got a little bit of time and played like half the year in his third year. Split time with Jake Rudock, another guy that ended up being an NFL guy. Rudock and Beathard. And then after their bowl game, Kirk Ferentz released a depth chart like 2 weeks after the bowl game for the next year to keep Beathard, and said Beathard was number 1. Rudock transferred out, went to Michigan, was whatever at Michigan, got drafted, whatever. But Beathard then won the starting job and then became C.J. Beathard as a redshirt junior. Okay? Just like Nick Saban says, it takes a process. Like Nick Saban says, people expect us to just crap out players. He didn't say crap out. He said the S word, but I'm not going to do that because this is not Barstool. So, with Beathard, excellent player. And if Thorne is remotely in that category, it might take some time, right? So, don't expect Joe Montana. Or actually, you might expect Joe Montana because it took Joe Montana a while also. Took him a while to beat out, who was it? Rusty Lish? Remember Rusty Lish? It took a while. Joe Montana did not start at the beginning of the 1978 season when they won the national championship, or 77? They beat Texas in the Cotton Bowl, Vegas Ferguson and those guys. Ross Browner, Joey Browner, Golick, Jerome Evans, Hunter. This guy Hunter? James Hunter? No, not James Hunter. James Hunter was to play for the Detroit Lions. Luther Bradley? Was he from Notre Dame or... And there was Chris Haynes, wide receiver from Brother Rice. Ken McAfee. So it took Montana. He wasn't. He didn't play as a redshirt freshman. So it's going to take a while. And fans need to understand that. But everybody, of course, loves the backup quarterback. They loved Rocky Lombardi. Fans loved Damian Terry. And it's the same way at every program. When I was a third grader at Davisburg Elementary, I loved Joe Reed. Joe Reed. Who's Joe Reed? Joe Reed, the backup quarterback to Greg Landry of the Lions. I was sure that Joe Reed was better than Landry. Why do they keep playing Landry? I thought I had all the answers. Anyway, it's natural. But so everybody's got high expectations for Thorne, but he's just getting started. It's a process. C.J. Beathard, Connor Cook, Jim Miller, NFL quarterback, took him a while. Tony Banks takes a while. I know that's a different era, but people see Trevor Lawrence. Not everybody's Trevor Lawrence. There's a reason that Trevor Lawrence is considered one of the best quarterback prospects the game has seen in recent years. Not everybody's that. Do not expect Peyton Thorne to be that. What we got here? I think we're about done. Deion Sims, Le'Veon Bell. George Page says, any update on Izzo's health? Is he practicing with the team yet? Not that I know of. Haven't heard from him. Hope he's doing well. Vince Nystrom. I didn't see that. Vince Nystrom. Nystrom. Of the famous Nystrom clan from the Upper Peninsula. Nystrom. Ringing the Up North Cup. Yeah, he's related to Buck, if you're wondering. Sorry I outed you, Vince. But thank you. Thanks. Appreciate the personal sponsorship for the show tonight. Really appreciate that. Good job. Sorry I outed you. You don't mind. I went rogue there a little bit, but I knew that I could. I know you're okay with it. I hope. If not, I'll delete it out. Let me know, and I'll delete it out if you want me to. But anyway, awesome. Thank you. Ben Parris says, could Hartline, Ohio State's wide receivers coach, become offensive coordinator because of Jay Johnson's contract being up? I don't know much about that. Chris Trinum says Hartline is never leaving Ohio State. Plus, he's one of their best recruiters and a former player. Gordon Tonona says, it's when defensive team does it returned the kick out of the end zone. I don't know what that means. I tried. Matt Latham says, thoughts on the hockey team's opening series this week? I just went through it. Thanks, Matt. Arizona State did not look good against Michigan, but they've played 2 games. And Danton Cole's a little bit concerned about that because Michigan State did not have any exhibition games like they normally would against Canadian College. So Arizona State, not real good. Arizona State is playing a Big Ten schedule. They're here. They're in the Midwest for like the next month to play all these games because they couldn't get games back home. So they're kind of getting Arizona State at the wrong time. It's Michigan State's opener. Arizona State's already played. The time to get Arizona State is 3 weeks from now when they've been in the Midwest for a month. But I don't know. Not seen them. Arizona State, I watched some of that game against Michigan on Sunday, and they were outshot like 45-18 or something. Didn't look good, but the goalie did pretty well. They only lost like 3-1. They lost the night before 8-1 or something, but I'm not sure if it was the same goalie. Not sure what to expect there, but there's not many games this year. So like Danton Cole says, you cannot waste any. Michigan State's not played well against Arizona State the last 2 years. So right out of the chute, Thursday night, 6 o'clock, Big Ten Network. It's an important game if you're into Michigan State hockey. Vince Nystrom says, hi, Jim. No question. Thanks for everything you do. You and Paul and the team do. Absolutely. Paul Konerdijk, great job. Corey Robinson, great job recruiting anchor, SpartanMag.com. Justin Thind, SpartanMag.com. Intern extraordinaire. Yeah, put that on your resume. You're an intern. Put whatever you want on your resume, Justin. You're great. Those guys are good. Not that he needs anything on his resume. The guy's a mechanical engineering major. Yeah, mechanical engineering. Oh, yeah, I was also intern for SpartanMag.com. All right, Vince Nystrom. Matt Latham. Hockey team has a grad transfer that could be pretty good, impactful. Charlie Combs. Yeah, Combs is transfer from Bemidji State. I think he had 11 or 12 goals last year. Shorter guy, like 5'7". I'm expecting him to be like a little Sean Hafey type of guy. I don't know. I've never seen him play, but they're expecting him to be a winger on one of the top 2 lines and produce. DMAC says any 4-stars on the horizon. Not that I know of. Not right now. DMAC says, plus, what's the word on Dobbs and the other corner from Belleville? The other corner from Belleville, you got Davion Williams and Julian Barnett. Barnett started at nickel against Iowa, but then came out, and then he started the second half, then came out and only played 14 snaps, but he did start. He's still learning to get a handle on the defense. He's still not completely trustworthy to provide the same paginess that's needed in a defensive backfield for changing coverages and so forth. That's the problem with Barnett. But he's got the physical ability. It's a process. Dobbs had some health problems in the fall. So still working through that. I don't know where that stands in terms of getting back on the field. I've not heard about him like opting out or anything like that. But, there's been some talk that how much does he love football, so he needs to prove himself there. So that's the deal on Dobbs. Aaron May says, I agree. Can't believe Spartan Stadium alone. I can't believe that guy. When you've got like a good legendary old stadium where the game of the century was played, you protect that. That's something special. And it's right there in the river with the trees and stuff. I mean, you got a 75,000. Not many places seat 75,000 and have trees around them in a river like 100 yards away. Now, maybe like the Tennessee River for like where the Titans play, or the Ohio River where, the Bengals play, or the Three Rivers where the Steelers used to play. But those are big, like industrial rivers. I mean, the Red Cedar River, I know it's been dirty in the past, but we're going to clean it up. Don't worry. But it's a nice river, right? Trees, and you got sycamores over there by the Sparty statue. It's a park-like atmosphere. It's a beautiful thing. You don't mess with that. It's a great football environment. I know we're all used to it because we see it there every year, but it's great. It's great. It's not like, my buddy Tim Stott was talking about, what they need to do is just level everything and just put parking around that thing like Hawkeye Arena. It should just be all parking. Tim's wife told him he was crazy about that, and she was right. I like trees. Mr. Bowman says, so Jennison is much younger of a building than Spartan Stadium if they replaced it with the Breslin. It's true, but basketball arenas are not football stadiums. You know what I'm saying? Chris Trainham says, Beathard, solid quarterback, career backup in the NFL. He is solid with 49ers. DMAC says, was Connor Cook attitude that bad that no NFL team wanted him? He was better than Beathard. I don't know if it's attitude. If you got bad attitude, you can play if you can play. But Cook, I'm not sure he ever became fully healthy with his shoulder, the shoulder that he injured late in the 2015 season at Maryland. He was not healthy against Iowa, was not healthy in the bowl game. He admitted that later. I don't know if he ever returned to health ever again. Chris Trainham says his arm was not right. Gordon Tonona says, Cook reminds me of the quarterback in the movie Draft Day. Cook was one of only 3 players to jump in the stands after beating Michigan. He was all about himself. Why wasn't Cook on the field? I don't know that. But you're free to post that here. Chris Trainham says his arm wasn't right with respect to Cook. Detroit Spartan says his throwing shoulder has never been the same. I'd like to talk to him about that someday. That's something that's not really been written. I don't know if he would talk to me or not, because I'm not sure he ever got over it when I said that he was not going to be the quarterback, and I don't blame him. Anyway, he's a great Spartan. Did a lot of great things for the program. Hey, man, we're all wrapped up. We're all done. Appreciate everybody checking us out. SpartanMag Live. There we went hour and 20 again. Didn't mean to. I thought with only 9 questions on the mailbag would keep it lighter this time, but it didn't. If you don't come back next week, have a happy Thanksgiving. We're going to plan to do one. Is next week Thanksgiving? We'll do one next Tuesday night. We're going to do it. After the game Saturday, Mr. Bowman says, keep going. I always something to eat, man. I haven't eaten yet. Post-game Saturday, hopefully Michigan State plays Maryland. Right now, I'm not so sure. Post-game, we're going to do it. Post-game call-in show. Some of you guys have been calling in, been having fun. Some of you guys have not been calling in. So make sure you call in, or I'm going to send Rob South and Old Tuck after you. Anyway, everybody have a great evening. Everybody take care, and we'll see you soon. SpartanMag.com. I got the VCast coming up in a day or so. Got to do the skull session with my guy Armstrong. If not, maybe my guy Garland. Garland didn't show up tonight. He's probably watching, but we got to get a skull session. I want to start doing those earlier in the week because we do them later in the week and they don't get as much listenership. We need to do it earlier in the week. Anyway, thanks for checking us out. Go over to SpartanMag.com. My name is Jim Comparoni from East Lansing, Michigan. You've been watching the Spartan Mag Live. Take care.